In his 2005 book Collapse, zoologist Jared Diamond, who's perhaps best known for his previous book Guns, Germs, and Steel, argues that our modern notion of quote-unquote hunter-gatherer, quote-unquote primitive societies living in harmony with nature and not having any negative impact on nature is false. Diamond lays out an argument that humans, whenever we have introduced ourselves into any environment, and this goes all the way back to our pre-building, pre-agricultural periods in our evolution, we have always impacted the environment in ways that result in extinctions of wildlife and basically garbage. Fast forward to the present, and the amount of garbage that human societies are piling all around us is something that really warrants consideration. But where do you begin when you consider the notion that everything we do might be in some way, or is in some way, poisonous? It's extremely daunting when you think about it. It's interesting to note that religious systems throughout history have generally placed humans above the rest of nature. So even in many of our surviving prominent religious traditions throughout the world, the sense of the pyramid and the food chain is with this sort of like overly endowed with a brain ape at the top of everything, riding the joystick, to spiritual whatever. If you look at the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, the most widespread interpretation of what's in the book of Genesis is that humans committed something called original sin. That by reaching for knowledge, we violated the code of our harmonious existence in some sort of paradise-like setting where we were innocent and didn't use our minds. Original sin, then, means accepting and utilizing what, according to this particular religious belief and religious scripture, we were given by God, we were endowed with, we were made this way. Clearly, biology, whether you believe in God or not, we were made this way because we have a brain, and we use it. So the Bible starts off, makes its sort of opening, its strong opening act with humanity being punished for becoming aware of what we're capable of. If you look at this from an eco-psychological perspective, perhaps the people who came up with the stories that ended up in the book of Genesis, prior to their being written down for however many thousands of years or however long that was before the oral tradition was actually written into, transcribed in any written form, it makes you wonder whether they had some dim anxiety that even at their stage in development, where they of course could not picture, as far as we know, they could not picture what the world would be in the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. They most likely weren't able to picture modern society, modern the modern industrialized world. Yet there's a feeling that reverberates through the book of Genesis that somehow, by using our minds, we would go astray. Perhaps that sense of original sin is the submerged, kind of unconscious and not fully realized awareness in the gut of the people in that time period who were living in the Fertile Crescent, who sensed that even by developing agriculture, they had somehow diverged from the track of nature, and that this would bring horrific consequences, that we would somehow be robbing ourselves of our spirit by putting our cerebral power above anything else. Of course, we have no way of knowing, but it's an interesting way of looking at original sin and kind of putting an ecological spin on the Bible, and applying the lens of ecological responsibility to religious belief systems, most of which don't really come ready-made with a vocabulary for this kind of thing. But perhaps the seeds of that vocabulary are there already in the book of Genesis. However acceptable the notion is to you that there, number one, is a godlike entity, and number two, that this godlike entity would hold it against us, that we are acting in accordance with our nature. After all, our brain capacity is a natural event. Our evolution to this point is a natural event. So even by doing what we do and building what we've built and wrecking what we've wrecked and poisoning what we're poisoning, this is part of our quote-unquote nature in a sense.